Bobby Beausoleil. Robert Kenneth Beausoleil, born November 6, 1947, in Santa Barbara, California, began his career as a musician and actor in Kenneth Anger's avant-garde films during the late 1960s counterculture movement that was sweeping through California. The charismatic young performer with striking looks appeared in Mondo Hollywood, a documentary capturing the psychedelic scene in Los Angeles, and was cast as Lucifer in Anger's experimental occult film Lucifer Rising, which would become an underground classic in experimental cinema circles. He also performed in the softcore western The Ramrodder, filmed near Spahn Ranch, the infamous location that would become forever synonymous with the Manson family and their reign of terror. Beausoleil was also an accomplished musician, playing guitar and forming various bands in the San Francisco Bay Area music scene. His promising artistic pursuits in music, acting, and the underground film scene would be forever overshadowed when he became the first Manson family member convicted of taking a life, preceding the notorious Tate LaBianca incidents that would shock the world. What drove this promising artist to cross that irreversible line? On July 25, 1969, Beausoleil arrived at music teacher Gary Hinman's modest Topanga Canyon home alongside Susan Atkins and Mary Bruner, two fellow Manson family members, demanding money that Manson claimed Hinman owed from what turned out to be a fabricated bad drug deal. The confrontation at Hinman's residence stretched across 3 agonizing days, during which the 34-year-old Buddhist and musician who gave music lessons to support himself was held hostage in his own home and subjected to increasing threats and intimidation. On July 26th, Charles Manson himself arrived at the scene with Bruce Davis and slashed Hinman's face with a sword, severing part of his left ear in a display of extreme cruelty before leaving Beausoleil to finish what had been started. Manson told Beausoleil to handle the situation before departing with Davis. The following day, July 27, 1969, Beausoleil ended Hinman's life with a knife, stabbing him twice in the chest near the heart. He then wrote "Political Pig" on the wall in the victim's own fluids and drew a panther paw print, attempting to frame the Black Panthers for the act in a calculated effort to mislead investigators. This became the Manson family's first ending of a life, occurring just weeks before the infamous Tate LaBianca incidents that would make international headlines and forever change California's image. His freedom ended quickly. California Highway Patrol found him sleeping in Hinman's stolen 1965 Fiat automobile on U.S. Route 101 on August 6, 1969, just 10 days after Hinman's life ended. The weapon used was found hidden in the tire well of the stolen vehicle, along with other evidence linking him to the scene. Beausoleil's first trial ended in a hung jury in March 1970, demonstrating the complex nature of the case and the challenge prosecutors faced in the early days of understanding the Manson family's dynamics. However, at his second trial, Beausoleil was convicted of first-degree ending of life in Los Angeles Superior Court on April 18, 1970, and sentenced to the ultimate punishment available at that time in California. How has the justice system handled his case over more than 5 decades? His sentence was commuted to life with the possibility of parole after California's 1972 ruling in People v. Anderson temporarily invalidated the state's capital punishment statute. Beausoleil, now 78 years old, remains incarcerated at California Medical Facility in Vacaville. Over his more than 55 years of incarceration, he has been denied parole 21 times, making him one of California's longest-serving prisoners. During his decades in prison, Beausoleil has continued his musical pursuits, recording albums from behind bars and maintaining a cult following in underground music circles, even scoring Kenneth Anger's Lucifer Rising from prison. As of early 2026, the last time a parole panel recommended Beausoleil for release was in January 2019. His most recent hearing took place in March 2024, which resulted in a 3-year denial of suitability, meaning the panel did not find him fit for release. Governor Newsom reversed Beausoleil's 2019 grant on April 26, 2019. There is no official record of a gubernatorial reversal occurring in May 2025, as there was no pending grant to reverse following his 2024 denial. Because Beausoleil received a 3-year denial during his last hearing in March 2024, his next parole suitability hearing is tentatively scheduled for March 2027. The Manson family's first conviction set a legal precedent that would influence California criminal justice for decades. But the next case shows how fame continued long after the cameras stopped rolling. Michael Jace. Michael Andrew Jace, born July 13, 1962 in Paterson, New Jersey, was best known for playing Officer Julian Lowe, a complex character struggling with his identity and faith, across all 7 seasons of FX's critically acclaimed police drama, The Shield. The role earned him recognition and steady work in Hollywood's competitive television landscape. His film credits included memorable appearances in Forrest Gump as a Black Panther member, Boogie Nights in Paul Thomas Anderson's ensemble cast, and Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes. He also appeared in numerous television shows including Southland, Burn Notice, The Mentalist, and NYPD Blue, building a reputation as a reliable character actor. Jace had been working steadily in Hollywood for nearly 2 decades before his career came to an abrupt and shocking end. Behind the scenes, however, his personal life was unraveling in ways that would shock those who knew him as a professional actor and seemingly devoted father to his 3 children. On May 19, 2014, Jace ended the life of his wife, April Jace, 40, a financial aid counselor at Biola University who had been married to him for 10 years in their Hyde Park, Los Angeles home, in a residential neighborhood known for its family-friendly atmosphere. According to devastating testimony from their then 8-year-old son, who witnessed the entire incident, Jace told his wife, who was a competitive runner and marathon enthusiast who had completed multiple races, "If you like running, then run to heaven," before firing twice at her legs with a handgun in front of their children. April had told him earlier that day she wanted a divorce, which apparently triggered his rage and feelings of abandonment. She had just returned home from her son's baseball game at around 8:30 p.m. when the incident occurred. The couple had been experiencing marital problems for months, with Jace becoming increasingly controlling and jealous. What happened in those final terrifying moments? Jace called 911 immediately after the incident, calmly stating, "I shot my wife," in a chilling admission that was recorded and later played for the jury. When police arrived at the scene within minutes, he was waiting outside the home and surrendered without incident, still holding his weapon. He later confessed to detectives during interrogation, "I was just angry. All I intended to do was shoot her in the leg," claiming he hadn't meant to end her life but rather to hurt her. Prosecutors argued the leg shots were intentional, designed to cause maximum pain and suffering before ending her life, making it an act of calculated cruelty. Financial stress and jealousy were identified as motives, as Jace had been struggling with money problems and owed $500,000 in back taxes and child support from a previous marriage, and he suspected April of having a relationship with someone else. On May 31, 2016, a Los Angeles Superior Court jury found him guilty of second-degree ending of life after deliberating less than 3 hours. The jury rejected the first-degree charge, finding insufficient evidence of premeditation despite the calculated nature of his actions and his statement about running to heaven. Judge Robert J. Perry sentenced Jace to 40 years to life on June 10, 2016, 15 years for the conviction plus 25 years for the firearm enhancement. The judge stated the sentence was appropriate given the premeditated nature of the offense and the presence of the children who witnessed their mother's ending. April's father gave an emotional victim impact statement, describing the devastating effect on the family and the trauma inflicted on his grandchildren, who witnessed their mother's final moments and will carry that memory for life. Jace, now 63, is incarcerated at California State Prison, Corcoran, the same facility that houses other high-profile California inmates. His appeals were exhausted in 2019 when Judge Perry declined to strike the weapon enhancement at resentencing, despite defense arguments about his otherwise clean record and good behavior. His earliest parole eligibility is approximately 2034, when he would be 92 years old, making it virtually certain he will spend the remainder of his life behind bars. The courtroom brought justice for one family, but the next case involved a very different kind of betrayal that shattered a cable television empire. Will Hayden. William Michael Hayden, born June 24, 1965, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, was a Marine Corps veteran who served in the 1980s who founded Red Jacket Firearms, a custom gun manufacturing shop located in Baton Rouge, and starred in Discovery Channel's Sons of Guns, 2011 to 2014, a reality series following the Louisiana-based gunsmith business that specialized in building custom firearms and military-grade weapons for clients around the world. The show attracted millions of viewers each week, fascinated by his expertise, larger-than-life personality, and the unique weapons his team created, including everything from custom rifles to restored historical firearms. The series ran for 5 seasons and over 60 episodes, and became one of Discovery's most popular programs, launching Hayden into celebrity status and making Red Jacket Firearms a destination for gun enthusiasts. Behind the scenes, however, a darker and more disturbing reality was unfolding that would eventually destroy everything he had built and reveal him as something far different from the TV personality millions had watched. In August 2014, Hayden's personal assistant witnessed him in an inappropriate situation and reported him to East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office, triggering an investigation that would uncover decades of hidden actions targeting vulnerable victims. He was arrested on August 8, 2014, shocking fans of the show and the Louisiana community, where he had become something of a local celebrity. Discovery Channel canceled Sons of Guns on August 27, 2014, issuing a statement that the charges were serious and horrific, and immediately distancing themselves from Hayden and his business, pulling all episodes from rotation. Additional victims came forward after news of his arrest broke, including his own daughter, Stephanie Hayden, who bravely testified against him in court, revealing a pattern of harm that had occurred over many years within his own family. The investigation eventually revealed multiple victims spanning different time periods and locations, painting a picture of calculated predatory behavior hidden behind a public persona. How did the legal system respond to these devastating revelations? On April 7, 2017, after a trial that included emotional testimony from victims, a jury in Louisiana's 19th Judicial District Court found Hayden guilty of 2 counts of serious harm and 1 count of forcible harm after just 1 hour of deliberation, indicating the overwhelming strength of the evidence presented against him. The trial included emotional testimony from multiple victims who described in detail the long-term harm they had suffered and the fear they lived with for years. Judge Mike Irwin sentenced him to 2 life sentences to run concurrently, plus 40 years to run consecutively for his first set of convictions. He later received a 3rd concurrent life sentence for additional crimes. The judge called the crimes heinous and particularly egregious, and noted the lasting trauma inflicted on the victims who would carry these scars for the rest of their lives. In July 2017, he pleaded no contest in Livingston Parish to additional serious charges involving another victim from a different time period, receiving a 3rd concurrent life sentence that would run alongside his existing sentences. The no contest plea meant he did not admit guilt, but accepted the conviction, likely as part of a legal strategy to avoid additional public trial proceedings that would further traumatize victims. Hayden, now in his late 50s, is serving his sentences at Louisiana State Penitentiary, Angola, one of America's most notorious maximum security prisons located on a former slave plantation. The Louisiana Supreme Court denied his final appeal without written reasons on November 5, 2019, exhausting all his legal remedies and options for appeal. He has no parole eligibility whatsoever and will spend the rest of his natural life in prison. His daughter Stephanie has become an advocate for other survivors, using her platform to raise awareness about these issues and encourage others to come forward. From reality, TV fame, and gun industry celebrity to maximum security confinement. But the next case involves a figure from both the big screen and the fighting ring whose crimes would span decades before justice caught up. Jo Sun. Joseph Youngmin Sun, born November 20, 1970 in South Korea and raised in California, was an MMA fighter with a 0-4 professional record who competed in early UFC events during the sport's formative years, but gained his greatest fame playing the henchman Random Task, a parody of James Bond's Odd Job character, in the blockbuster comedy Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery, starring Mike Myers. The character's signature move involved throwing a shoe at enemies instead of Oddjob's deadly hat, becoming one of the film's most memorable running gags. Sun also founded his own mixed martial arts organization called Jo Sun Do and worked as a fight choreographer on various action films. His brief moment in Hollywood and the fighting world would be forever overshadowed by serious crimes that spanned more than 2 decades before justice finally caught up with him through advances in DNA technology. In December 1990, Sun and an accomplice committed serious harm against a person in Huntington Beach, California, on Christmas Eve, a particularly cruel timing during the holiday season that compounded the horror of the incident. The victim was held for several hours in what prosecutors described as a prolonged ordeal and endured repeated harm before being released with severe physical and psychological trauma. The case went cold for 18 years with no leads until 2008, when Sun's DNA, collected after an unrelated felony vandalism plea in connection with a drunken incident at his church in 2008, matched evidence from the 1990 scene in what investigators called a lucky break. The DNA match was uploaded to a criminal database, which flagged the connection to the unsolved 1990 case, leading to Sun's arrest nearly 2 decades after the incident. Because the statute of limitations had expired on certain charges under California law at the time, Orange County prosecutors charged him with causing serious harm through infliction of extreme pain, a crime with no time limit under California law that could be prosecuted regardless of how much time had passed. The victim, who had moved on with her life and built a career, courageously testified at trial about the December 1990 incident and faced Sun in court for the first time in nearly 20 years. He was convicted in August 2011 one felony count of torture, which carried a sentence of life in prison with the possibility of parole by an Orange County jury, and sentenced to 7 years to life for the 1990 incident. Sun showed no remorse during the trial and maintained he was innocent despite the overwhelming DNA evidence. But would his harmful actions end there once behind bars? Less than 1 month into his sentence at Wasco State Prison in Kern County, Sun took the life of his cellmate Michael Graham on October 10, 2011. Graham was found unresponsive in the cell they shared after Sun used his martial arts training and physical strength in what authorities described as a sustained and brutal attack. At his 2017 trial in Kern County Superior Court for the prison incident, he was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter during incarceration and received an additional 27 years to life on top of his existing sentence. Judge John R. Brownlee called the actions as monstrous and despicable as anything this court has ever seen, noting Sun showed absolutely no remorse for either the original crime or for taking his cellmate's life. As of early 2026, Jo Sun is incarcerated at the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego County. With the original life term plus 27 additional years running consecutively, he will likely spend the rest of his natural life behind bars. His earliest possible parole would be sometime in his 70s, though parole is considered extremely unlikely given his actions while incarcerated and the nature of both crimes. While this case exposed serious harm over 2 decades and across 2 separate violent incidents, the next involves a rising star whose calculated pattern of harm was just being uncovered. Colin K.R. Walker. Kalen Rashad Walker, born March 28, 1995 in Los Angeles, was a rapper signed to Empire Records who had been building significant buzz in the hip-hop community with several music releases and had appeared as gang member Juju in the 2018 Superfly remake, a reboot of the classic 1970s blaxploitation film that starred Trevor Jackson and was directed by Director X. Walker had over 100,000 Instagram followers and used his verified blue checkmark status to establish credibility with potential victims. His rising career in both music and film came crashing down when his calculated pattern of harm came to light through a comprehensive investigation that revealed a disturbing pattern spanning 5 years and targeting aspiring young artists. Walker used his verified social media accounts to contact aspiring models and musicians on Instagram and other platforms, promising professional photo shoots and name-dropping celebrities including Drake, Chris Brown, and other A-list stars to gain their trust and make his offers seem legitimate. Prosecutors alleged he lured women and girls to isolated locations, including hotel rooms and apartments, under false pretenses of career advancement opportunities, and caused them serious harm between 2013 and 2018. More than 30 women came forward with allegations after news of his arrest broke, though not all cases resulted in formal charges due to statute of limitations or evidence issues. Many victims described remarkably similar patterns: promises of career advancement and music industry connections, meetings at hotels or audition spaces that turned out to be empty, and calculated manipulation using his celebrity status. LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division arrested Walker on September 11, 2018, after a lengthy and complex investigation that involved interviewing dozens of potential victims and witnesses across Southern California. After a 6-week trial that included emotional and graphic testimony from multiple victims in Los Angeles Superior Court, a jury convicted him on April 18, 2022, of 3 counts of forcible serious harm, 2 counts involving those unable to consent, 2 counts involving intoxicated victims, and 1 count of assault. He was acquitted on 3 other counts where evidence was deemed insufficient by the jury, though prosecutors maintained the incidents occurred. What was the court's response to his calculated pattern of predatory actions? Judge Joseph Brandolino sentenced Walker to 50 years to life on October 17, 2022, with mandatory lifetime registration requirements that will follow him even if he's ever released from custody. The judge noted the calculated nature of the crimes and the use of his celebrity status and social media following to prey on vulnerable victims with dreams of making it in entertainment. As Walker was led away in handcuffs following sentencing, he shouted to the courtroom, "I didn't harm anybody, Your Honor," maintaining his innocence despite the jury's unanimous verdict on 8 counts. Deputy District Attorney Cynthia Wallace called him truly a predator who used his status in the entertainment industry to target and harm vulnerable young women with aspirations. Walker is serving his sentence in California State Prison. Defense attorney Andrew Flyer announced plans to appeal, calling the sentence draconian and excessive, and arguing that procedural errors occurred during the trial and jury selection. But no appellate court decisions have been publicly reported through early 2026. In June 2024, Walker posted on Instagram from prison, claiming to be pursuing a master's degree while incarcerated and continuing to maintain his innocence, which sparked immediate controversy among survivors and victim advocates who felt he was minimizing his actions. His earliest parole eligibility would be around 2068, when he would be in his early 70s, making it likely he will spend the majority of his remaining life behind bars. From Hollywood and music industry aspirations to a maximum security facility serving 50 years to life, the next case involves a beloved TV star whose private activities would shock fans worldwide. Mark Salling. Mark Wayne Salling, born August 17, 1982 in Dallas, Texas, played Noah Puck Puckerman, the high school bad boy mohawk-wearing jock with a hidden talent for singing and surprising depth. On Fox's hit musical comedy drama Glee, and won a Screen Actors Guild Award with the ensemble cast in 2010 for outstanding performance by an ensemble in a comedy series. The show was a cultural phenomenon that launched numerous careers and became known for its messages of acceptance, diversity, anti-bullying themes, and inclusion of LGBTQ+ characters, making Salling's private activities even more disturbing and hypocritical when they came to light. He appeared in 113 episodes of the series over its 6-season run and was part of numerous musical performances that topped the iTunes charts. Salling also released solo music and tried to launch a music career outside of Glee. In December 2015, LAPD's Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force arrested Salling at his Sunland home on federal charges after an ex-girlfriend reported him to authorities when she discovered disturbing material on his computer. Investigators found thousands of images and videos of illegal material depicting minors on his laptop, external hard drive, and USB flash drive downloaded between April and December 2015. A forensic examination revealed over 50,000 images of prohibited content stored on his devices. A federal grand jury indicted him on May 27, 2016, with prosecutors detailing the scope of the collection and the ages of those depicted in the material. Salling pleaded guilty on December 18, 2017, in U.S. District Court, to one count of possession of illegal material depicting minors as part of a plea agreement that dismissed one additional count of receiving such material. He faced 4 to 7 years in federal prison, 20 years supervised release upon completion of his sentence, mandatory registration requirements for life, and $50,000 restitution per victim depicted in the material. The plea deal also required him to stay away from places where individuals under 18 congregate and prohibited him from having any unsupervised contact with anyone under that age, including his own nephews. Would he ever face that sentence and the public shame of being a registered offender? On January 30th, 2018, 6 weeks before his scheduled March 7th sentencing date, Salling was found deceased near a riverbed in Big Tuhunga Canyon in the Sunland Tutunga neighborhood of Los Angeles. The Los Angeles County coroner ruled his passing self-inflicted by hanging. His attorney, Michael J. Proctor, stated Salling was doing his best to atone for some serious mistakes and errors of judgment in a statement released after his passing. The case was dismissed on February 7, 2018, following his passing. His Glee castmates expressed shock and complicated feelings, with many declining to comment publicly given the circumstances of both his crimes and his passing. He was 35 years old. While Salling avoided prison through his passing, the next case shows another actor who will spend the remainder of his natural life behind bars for similar actions involving a disturbing pattern. Rashid Bird. Rashid Bird Hardwick, born September 18, 1981, in Freeport, New York, was a 7'1" former professional basketball player who briefly played for the Los Angeles Defenders, the Los Angeles Lakers NBA Development League affiliate team, and appeared in the Will Ferrell basketball comedy Semi-Pro, alongside Woody Harrelson and Andre Benjamin in a small role as a player. Bird stood out due to his extreme height and used this physical presence to intimidate victims. His imposing physical stature and brief athletic career masked a disturbing pattern of serious harm that would eventually catch up with him through the determination of law enforcement and brave victims who came forward despite fears of not being believed. An LAPD robbery-homicide division investigation beginning in 2019 revealed Byrd had caused serious harm to at least 10 women over a 5-year period spanning from 2015 through 2020. Detectives discovered he had a prior 2010 conviction in Nevada for similar actions, which should have made him a registered offender, but he had failed to properly comply with registration requirements and had moved to California without updating authorities. He was arrested September 18, 2020, on $4.15 million bail, one of the highest bail amounts in recent Los Angeles County history, reflecting the severity of the charges, and charged with 20 counts, including multiple counts of forcible serious harm and other related charges. Prosecutors alleged he used dating apps, including Tinder and Bumble, as well as Instagram, to meet victims, often claiming to be a successful actor and professional athlete to gain their trust. After a 3-week trial in January and February 2024 that included testimony from numerous victims, Byrd was convicted on all 20 charges by a Los Angeles County Superior Court jury who deliberated for several days. Multiple victims bravely testified during the trial, describing encounters that followed disturbing and consistent patterns of manipulation. LAPD Detective Dara Brown, who led the investigation, described his pattern of predatory behavior. He started as a charmer, playing up his status as an athlete and pseudo-celebrity, but that quickly faded into serious harm and intimidation once victims were isolated, noting how he weaponized his 7'1" physical size and claimed industry connections to control and frighten victims. How did the court respond to this serial pattern of calculated predatory harm? Los Angeles County Superior Court Judge Michael E. Whitaker sentenced Byrd to 90 years to life on March 1, 2024, calling the crimes predatory, calculated, and showing a complete lack of empathy for his victims. At 42 years old at the time of sentencing, this effectively ensures he will never walk free again and will spend the rest of his natural life behind bars. The sentence was calculated as consecutive terms for each count, reflecting the multiple victims and separate incidents over the 5-year period. Several victims gave powerful impact statements, describing lasting trauma, difficulty trusting others, and expressing relief at the lengthy sentence that would keep him away from society. Byrd is serving his sentence in California State Prison. The specific facility has not been publicly confirmed for security reasons, but he remains in custody with no possibility of early release or parole consideration for decades. His defense attorneys did not file an appeal as of early 2025, though they technically have time remaining under California law to do so. From the basketball court and Hollywood sets to a prison cell for the next 90 years to life. But the next case involves an actor whose career ended not in conviction, but in acquittal, yet suspicion that never fully lifted. Robert Blake. Robert Blake, born Michael James Gubitosi on September 18, 1933, had an extensive career spanning over 7 decades in Hollywood, from child roles in Our Gang, Little Rascals film shorts, where he was known as Mickey, and appeared in over 40 shorts, to his Emmy-winning performance as the streetwise title character in the detective series Beretta with his pet cockatoo Fred, and his acclaimed chilling turn as real-life shooter Perry Smith in Richard Brooks's adaptation of Truman Capote's In Cold Blood, which earned him critical praise. His decades-long Hollywood career, which included over 160 film and television credits and made him a household name, would end under a dark cloud of suspicion that never fully lifted despite a criminal acquittal. On May 4, 2001, Blake's wife, Bonnie Lee Backley, 44, was ended by gunfire while sitting in Blake's car near Woodbridge Street, just east of Kraft Avenue, where the couple had just finished dinner around 9 p.m. Blake, then 67, claimed he returned to the restaurant to retrieve a weapon he legally carried for protection that he claimed to have left behind at their table, and found her with fatal injuries when he came back just moments later. She had been shot twice in the head at close range with a weapon that was later found in a nearby dumpster. He was arrested April 18, 2002, nearly 1 year after Buckley's passing, as investigators built their case, and charged with ending her life and with solicitation of ending a life. As prosecutors alleged, he had tried to hire stuntmen to do it months before allegedly doing it himself. At his highly publicized 2005 trial in Los Angeles Superior Court that lasted several months, defense attorney M. Gerald Schwartzbach systematically attacked the credibility of two stuntmen witnesses who claimed Blake tried to hire them months earlier, arguing they were unreliable career criminals seeking fame and money from tabloids. The prosecution's case relied heavily on circumstantial evidence and the testimony of these witnesses who had credibility issues. On March 16, 2005, Blake was acquitted of all criminal charges after jurors deliberated for 9 days over the evidence. Jury foreman Thomas Nicholson explained to reporters waiting outside the courthouse that prosecutors couldn't put the weapon in his hand, and the evidence didn't meet the beyond reasonable doubt standard required for criminal conviction. However, in a subsequent civil wrongful ending of life trial brought by Buckley's children from previous relationships, a jury found Blake liable for her passing on November 18, 2005, using the lower preponderance of evidence standard required in civil cases rather than the beyond reasonable doubt criminal standard, and awarded her children $30 million in damages, later reduced to $15 million on appeal, for the loss of their mother. Blake filed for bankruptcy in February 2006, claiming he was financially ruined by legal fees exceeding millions of dollars and the civil judgment. He largely disappeared from public life after the trials concluded, giving only occasional interviews to shows like Piers Morgan, where he maintained his innocence and expressed bitterness about his treatment. Blake passed away on March 9, 2023, at age 89, from heart disease at his Los Angeles home, having lived 22 years after Buckley's passing as a pariah in Hollywood. Bonnie Lee Buckley's ending officially remains unsolved in the eyes of law enforcement, with the case technically still open, though no other suspects have ever been identified or investigated. If you've made it this far and enjoy deep dives into the most shocking criminal cases, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to press the bell icon. Blake avoided prison but never escaped the shadow of suspicion. The next case, however, shows how life behind bars can end in further tragedy. Lloyd Avery II. Lloyd Fernandez Avery II, born June 21, 1969 in Los Angeles, played the Bloods gang member who shoots Ricky Baker in John Singleton's groundbreaking and Oscar-nominated film Boys in the Hood, a seminal work that defined 1990s urban cinema. Though his screen time in the critically acclaimed film totaled roughly 2 minutes, the role became iconic and is remembered as one of cinema's most chilling and memorable portrayals of gang-related street actions. The scene where he ends Ricky's life in broad daylight while the victim tried to escape remains one of the most devastating and frequently discussed moments in 1990s cinema. Avery came from a middle-class family in the View Park, Windsor Hills neighborhood, far removed from the gang life he would later embrace, and that would ultimately consume him. His brother Chad Avery was also an actor who appeared in various films and television shows and tried desperately to help Lloyd leave gang life behind. What led to his downfall and conviction? On July 1, 1999, Avery approached Annette Lewis and Percy Branch near Santa Barbara Plaza in South Los Angeles during what witnesses described as a tense confrontation. After an argument allegedly over a drug debt and gang territory dispute, he fired multiple times at both individuals. Lewis passed away that same day, and Branch succumbed to his injuries weeks later in the hospital. Avery had become affiliated with the Crips despite playing a blood member on screen, showing how deeply he had immersed himself in actual gang culture and how the line between his fictional and real life had become dangerously blurred. Shockingly, Avery continued acting while a fugitive from justice, filming 2 movies including the prison drama Lockdown before authorities finally caught up with him. He was arrested on December 8, 1999 near Beverly Hills after months of evading capture. At his December 2000 trial in Los Angeles Superior Court, prosecutor Hoon Chun made a statement that would become infamous, telling jurors, "This is a case about life imitating and even exceeding art." The prosecution argued Avery had become the character he once portrayed. How did Avery's story tragically end behind bars? Judge J. Stephen Chulliger sentenced him to life without the possibility of parole for 2 counts of first-degree ending of life with special circumstances, ensuring he would never walk free again. During his time in prison at various California facilities, Avery underwent a profound spiritual transformation and became a devout Christian who spent his days studying scripture and trying to guide other inmates toward faith, earning him the nickname Baby Jesus from fellow inmates due to his constant evangelizing, leading Bible study groups, and attempts to convert others to Christianity. On September 4, 2005, at Pelican Bay State Prison in Crescent City, California, one of the state's most notorious maximum security facilities, Avery was beaten to death by cellmate Kevin Roby, a diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic and self-proclaimed Satanist who had violent tendencies. Avery, who had been sharing a cell with Roby in the security housing unit, the most restrictive area of the prison, had written to his prison chaplain just 5 days before the incident, with an eerily prophetic message: "I know God has him around me for a reason." Roby, who grew increasingly agitated by what he perceived as Avery's constant religious proselytizing and called Avery's evangelizing pushing his agenda to convert me, later stated to investigators, "He was pushing his agenda to convert me to Christianity, which led to us fighting and me defending myself." Prison staff shockingly failed to discover Avery's body for 48 hours, despite 14 inmate counts conducted during that period, raising serious questions about staff negligence, proper oversight, and the prison's protocols for checking on inmates in solitary housing units. 5 correctional officers received only minor disciplinary penalties, including written reprimands and brief suspensions for failing to properly check the cell during their rounds. Roby received an additional life sentence for the assault, but was not prosecuted for the actual ending of Avery's life because he was already serving life without parole, and prosecutors determined additional charges would serve no practical purpose. Avery's grieving family filed a wrongful passing lawsuit against the California Department of Corrections, alleging gross negligence in housing him with a known dangerous and mentally unstable inmate. Avery was only 36 years old when his life ended. His story became a tragic example of life imitating art in the most devastating way possible, as the gang street actions he portrayed on screen became the reality that cost him his freedom and ultimately his life. Director John Singleton expressed deep sadness at Avery's trajectory, noting how the talented young actor had been unable to separate himself from the dangerous role that made him famous, and had instead embraced it completely. From one tragic ending to a calculated plan driven by pure greed, the next case involves a community theater actor whose financial desperation led to unspeakable acts. Daniel Wozniak. Daniel Patrick Wozniak, born March 23, 1984, in Long Beach, California, was a community theater actor in Orange County who performed in local productions at various venues and had built a modest but solid reputation in the area's tight-knit theater scene over several years. Wozniak had appeared in numerous shows and musicals, including comedies and dramas at the Hunger Artists Theater Company in Fullerton, where he was considered a reliable and talented performer. He was unemployed and deeply in debt when he committed double ending of life to fund his upcoming wedding to his fiancée Rachel Buffett, showing a level of callousness and calculated cruelty that shocked even veteran homicide investigators who had seen countless cases. What were the details of his calculated crimes? On May 21, 2010, Wozniak lured his neighbor and friend Sam Hare, a 26-year-old Army veteran who had just returned home from serving in Afghanistan, with $62,000 in combat pay savings that he was planning to use to start his life after military service, to a theater attic at Los Alamitos Joint Forces Training Base under the pretense of helping with a theater project. He shot Hare in the head at close range, then dismembered the body with an axe he had borrowed from the theater's prop department, showing shocking brutality and methodical planning. He scattered the remains in El Dorado Nature Center in Long Beach, attempting to dispose of evidence. That same evening, demonstrating stunning compartmentalization, Wozniak performed in the musical Nine at the Hunger Artists Theater, as if nothing had happened, singing and dancing on stage with enthusiasm while Hare's dismembered body lay hidden in the nature preserve. The next night, continuing his elaborate scheme, he used Hare's cell phone to lure Hare's tutor and close friend, Julia Kibuishi, a 23-year-old college student, to Hare's Costa Mesa apartment under false pretenses, where he shot her multiple times and staged the scene elaborately to frame Hare for her ending and make it appear as though Hare had committed an offense before fleeing. What led investigators to uncover Wozniak's elaborate scheme? Police caught Wozniak when a teenager he'd recruited to make ATM withdrawals from Hare's account became suspicious and told authorities about the strange requests and the man who approached him. Wozniak had promised the teen $100 for each withdrawal and told him it was research for a movie role he was preparing for. Security cameras captured the teen making the withdrawals, which led police directly to Wozniak. He was arrested at his bachelor party at a local bar on May 26, 2010, just 2 days before his scheduled wedding, and eventually confessed during a lengthy police interrogation, admitting, "I'm crazy and I did it. I killed Julie and I killed Sam, and I'm so sorry." His fiancée Rachel Buffett was initially arrested and held in custody as an accessory, but was later released when evidence conclusively showed she had absolutely no knowledge of the crimes or the source of the money Wozniak had been spending. An Orange County Superior Court jury convicted him on December 16, 2015, after hearing weeks of testimony, deliberating just over 2 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. The same jury then moved to the penalty phase and recommended the ultimate punishment, after deliberating only 1 hour and 19 minutes, among the shortest penalty phase deliberations in Orange County's legal history, reflecting the jury's horror at the calculated nature of the crimes. Judge James Rogan imposed the sentence on September 23, 2016, sentencing him to the ultimate punishment, plus 2 consecutive 25 years to life terms for the special circumstances. Wozniak is incarcerated at California Medical Facility in Vacaville after volunteering for the Condemned Inmate Transfer Pilot Program, which allows those under sentence to work in prison jobs and earn small amounts of money toward victim restitution payments. He currently works as a tutor helping other inmates earn their GEDs and as a hospice worker caring for dying inmates inside the facility. Governor Gavin Newsom's 2019 executive moratorium on the ultimate punishment in California means Wozniak will not face that outcome while the moratorium remains in effect. His case is on automatic appeal to the California Supreme Court, as are all such cases in the state. Sam Hare's devoted father Steve attended an incredible 193 court hearings over the years of legal proceedings, seeking justice for his son and never missing a single court appearance. While Wozniak's crimes were driven by financial greed and desperation, the next case involves a television star whose actions shattered lives in a different way entirely. Danny Masterson. Daniel Peter Masterson, born March 13, 1976, on Long Island, New York, played Stephen Hyde, the sarcastic, cynical, and conspiracy theory-obsessed teenager living in his best friend's basement. On Fox's hit sitcom, That 70s Show, for all 8 seasons spanning 200 episodes that made the show a cultural phenomenon. The role made him a household name and teen idol. He later starred as Rooster Bennett, a former soldier running the family ranch, on Netflix's The Ranch, opposite his former That 70s Show co-star Ashton Kutcher, until serious allegations surfaced and he was written off the show. He is a lifelong Scientologist, born into the organization through his parents and deeply connected to its upper-level hierarchy and celebrity membership. What were the allegations against this television star? 3 women alleged Masterson caused them serious harm at his Hollywood Hills mansion between 2001 and 2003, when he was at the height of his fame and power. All accusers and Masterson were members of the Church of Scientology at the time of the alleged incidents, which became a controversial central issue in the case. The victims testified that the Church of Scientology actively discouraged them from going to police for years through intimidation tactics and threatened them with being declared suppressive persons and cut off from family members who remained in the church, and subjected them to harassment and surveillance when they eventually did report to authorities. LAPD's Elite Robbery Homicide Division arrested Masterson on June 17, 2020, after a lengthy and complex investigation, and he was released on $3.3 million bail posted by the Church of Scientology and supporters. His first trial in Los Angeles Superior Court ended in a mistrial with a hung jury on November 30, 2022, with jurors hopelessly deadlocked on all counts after extensive deliberations that stretched for days. At his retrial before a different jury with modified jury instructions, a Los Angeles Superior Court jury convicted him on May 31, 2023, of 2 counts of forcible serious harm while acquitting on 1 count and remaining hung on a 3rd, showing the complexity of the case. The retrial significantly limited discussion of Scientology's role after defense arguments that it had prejudiced the first jury, though victims were still allowed to explain why they delayed reporting. What did the judge say when imposing sentence? Judge Charlene F. Olmedo delivered a powerful statement at sentencing, telling the defendant, "Mr. Masterson, you are not the victim here. Your actions 20 years ago took away another person's voice and choice. Your actions 20 years ago today were criminal, and that's why you are here." She imposed the statutory maximum sentence of 30 years to life, 15 years to life on each count, running consecutively rather than concurrently, on September 7, 2023, sending a clear message about the severity of the crimes. Masterson is currently incarcerated at California Men's Colony, a medium-security prison in San Luis Obispo, after being transferred from North Kern State Prison and Corcoran State Prison in the months following his conviction. His wife, Bijou Phillips, daughter of the Mamas and the Papas singer John Phillips, filed for divorce exactly 11 days after sentencing on September 18, 2023, ending their marriage of over a decade and seeking full custody of their daughter. In May 2024, his appellate attorney filed a detailed opening brief arguing that erroneous judicial rulings and improper exclusion of evidence require reversal of his convictions. A separate habeas corpus petition was filed on November 17, 2025, alleging ineffective assistance of trial counsel in both trials. He is eligible for his first parole hearing around 2042, when he would be in his mid-60s, though parole on such convictions is rarely granted on the first hearing. From Hollywood conviction to political intervention that rewrote the ending, the next case shows how fame and powerful connections can sometimes change everything. Todd and Julie Chrisley. Todd Chrisley, born April 6, 1969, in Georgia, and Julie Chrisley, born January 9, 1973, in South Carolina, starred in USA Network's massively popular reality series, Chrisley Knows Best, a reality show following their wealthy Atlanta family's outrageous exploits through nearly 180 episodes spanning 10 seasons that became one of cable's highest-rated family reality programs. The show portrayed their lavish lifestyle in excruciating detail, including their sprawling mansion, designer wardrobes worth hundreds of thousands, luxury vehicles, and Todd's controlling but supposedly humorous micromanaging parenting style that became his trademark. The family became reality TV staples and household names with multiple spin-off shows, including Growing Up Chrisley, Following Their Children, and various specials. What financial crimes were they accused of committing? Federal prosecutors in Atlanta alleged the couple committed $36 million in bank fraud between 2007 and 2012 by submitting dozens of false financial statements, including completely fabricated bank account statements and audit reports created using photo editing software, to obtain loans from various banks for luxury purchases, real estate investments, and maintaining their lavish lifestyle. They also evaded paying federal taxes from 2013 to 2016 on millions in income, using a loan-out company called 7 Seas Productions to hide Todd's substantial income from the reality show and other business ventures. An August 2019 federal grand jury indictment charged them with bank fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud banks, and tax evasion across multiple years. Julie faced an additional obstruction of justice charge for submitting a false credit report and bank statements to a grand jury during the investigation. After a 3-week federal trial in U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Georgia that included testimony from numerous bank officials and forensic accountants, a jury convicted both defendants on all counts on June 7, 2022, after several days of deliberations. U.S. Attorney Ryan K. Buchanan stated in a press release, "The Chrisleys have built an empire based on the lie that their wealth came from dedication and hard work. Their lengthy sentences reflect the magnitude of their criminal scheme and should serve as a warning to others." How did their sentences ultimately change through political intervention? Judge Eleanor L. Ross sentenced Todd to 12 years in federal prison and Julie to 7 years on November 21, 2022, with both also facing 16 months of supervised release upon completion of their sentences. Both were jointly ordered to pay $17.8 million in restitution to the defrauded banks. They reported to their assigned federal prison facilities on January 17, 2023. Todd to FPC Pensacola, a minimum security federal prison camp in Florida. Julie to FMC Lexington, a low-security federal medical center in Kentucky. In June 2024, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals upheld their convictions, but vacated Julie's sentence for resentencing on a technical issue regarding the calculation of financial loss amount in the sentencing guidelines. She was resentenced to the same 7 years on September 25, 2024 by Judge Ross. On May 28, 2025, President Donald Trump granted both Todd and Julie Chrisley full and unconditional presidential pardons, citing their family situation and rehabilitation efforts. They were immediately released after serving approximately 28 months of their sentences, just over 2 years. Their daughter, Savannah Chrisley, who had advocated extensively for their release through media appearances and political connections, and spoke at the 2024 Republican National Convention about criminal justice reform, issued a statement saying, "This moment is the answer to countless prayers and the result of never giving up hope." The Chrisleys immediately returned to their Nashville home and premiered a new reality show on Lifetime, The Chrisleys Back to Reality, in September 2025, documenting their prison experience and return to public life. The presidential pardon effectively erased their federal convictions from a legal standpoint, allowing them to fully resume their media careers and business ventures without restriction. While the Chrisleys received a presidential pardon after political intervention, The next case shows another reality star who earned early release through a very different path. Jen Shah. Jennifer Shah, born October 4, 1973, in Salt Lake City, Utah, starred on Bravo's reality series The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, beginning in Season 1 in 2020, becoming instantly notorious for flaunting an outrageously lavish lifestyle including designer clothes worth hundreds of thousands, multiple luxury vehicles, private jets, and extravagant parties thrown at her massive mansion. She quickly became one of the show's most controversial and central figures, known for her memorable catchphrases like, "The only thing I'm guilty of is being Shah-mazing," her explosive, confrontational personality, and her claims of being a successful marketing executive. What was the elaborate fraud scheme she operated? From 2012 to 2021, spanning nearly a decade, Shah operated and profited from a sophisticated nationwide telemarketing fraud scheme, specifically targeting elderly and vulnerable victims across the country, selling completely worthless business coaching and business opportunity services that promised financial independence and wealth, but delivered nothing of value. The scheme generated millions of dollars through aggressive high-pressure sales tactics and boiler room operations, where victims were called repeatedly and manipulated into spending their life savings. She and her conspirators generated and sold lists of potential victims, called LUD lists, identifying susceptible individuals who were then repeatedly victimized through multiple fraudulent schemes. On March 30, 2021, federal agents from multiple agencies arrested her in a coordinated operation during the filming of RHOSLC Season 2. She fled the set in a panic, claiming her husband Sharif had a medical emergency, only to be apprehended by waiting FBI agents just 12 minutes later at a different location. The dramatic arrest scene was captured on camera by production crews and later aired on the show, becoming one of reality TV's most shocking moments. How did her public stance change as trial approached? Shah initially pleaded not guilty and spent months proclaiming her complete innocence on social media and in interviews, using the tagline, "The only thing I'm guilty of is being Shah-mazing," as a rallying cry and selling free Jen Shah merchandise to her loyal fans who believed she was being unfairly targeted. However, 1 week before her trial was scheduled to begin in New York, on July 11, 2022, she made a stunning reversal and changed her plea to guilty in federal court, admitting in open court, "I knew this was wrong. I knew many people were harmed, and I'm so sorry." Prosecutors had overwhelming evidence, including recorded phone calls, financial records, and testimony from co-conspirators who had already pleaded guilty. What was her sentence, and how did she secure early release? U.S. District Judge Sidney H. Stein sentenced her to 78 months, which equals 6.5 years in federal prison, on January 6, 2023, which was less than the 10 years prosecutors had requested, but still a substantial sentence. She was also ordered to pay $6.6 million in restitution to victims and forfeit luxury goods, including designer handbags worth hundreds of thousands, jewelry, and other assets purchased with fraud proceeds. Judge Stein noted at sentencing that thousands of elderly people across the country lost tens of millions of dollars in total and were left with devastating financial and emotional consequences that will affect them for the rest of their lives. Shah was released from FPC Bryan, a minimum security federal prison camp in Texas, to community confinement in a halfway house on December 10, 2025, after serving approximately 33 months of her sentence, significantly less than half her original term, due to federal good behavior credits earned through exemplary conduct and successful participation in prison programs. Her manager stated in a press release that she is genuinely not the same woman as she was before incarceration and has used this time for deep personal reflection and growth. From reality TV fraud schemes to Hollywood's biggest and most audacious financial scheme ever uncovered, The next case involves an actor whose Ponzi scheme dwarfed all others in entertainment industry history. Zachary Horwitz, Zach Avery. Zachary Joseph Horwitz, born December 5, 1986, in Berkeley, California, performed under the stage name Zach Avery in approximately 15 low-budget independent films that went largely unnoticed by mainstream audiences, including small, uncredited roles in Brad Pitt's World War II tank drama Fury, and tiny parts in the ballet biopic The White Crow, directed by Ralph Fiennes, and the thriller Last Moment of Clarity. His acting career was extremely modest and never achieved any mainstream success or recognition, with most of his roles being brief appearances or background work in forgettable direct-to-video releases. What was the massive scope of his fraudulent scheme? From 2014 to 2021, spanning 7 years of elaborate deception, Horwitz raised at least $650 million from over 250 investors through his company 1NMM Capital LLC by falsely claiming he had lucrative exclusive distribution deals with major streaming giants Netflix and HBO to acquire Latin American and international film distribution rights for independent films. He methodically fabricated entire contracts with forged executive signatures, created completely fake email addresses and domains mimicking HBO and Netflix corporate communications to fool investors, and promised investors returns ranging from 25% to 45% annually, which should have been an obvious red flag. Both Netflix and HBO issued statements confirming they never had any business relationship whatsoever with Horwitz or his company. Horwitz lived extraordinarily lavishly on fraud proceeds, spending over $6 million on a sprawling Beverlywood mansion in an exclusive Los Angeles neighborhood, an astounding $6.9 million in credit card charges on luxury goods and travel, $605,000 on luxury vehicles including a Tesla and Range Rover, and $345,000 on private jet charters and yacht rentals to maintain the facade of a successful Hollywood producer. Federal prosecutors called it the largest known Ponzi scheme in the history of this federal district and one of the largest ever in the entertainment industry. How was this massive fraud finally exposed and stopped? The FBI arrested Horwitz on April 6, 2021, after multiple investors reported mounting defaults on promised quarterly payments and began investigating the legitimacy of his claimed Netflix and HBO deals. He pleaded guilty to 1 count of securities fraud on October 4, 2021, admitting the entire operation was fraudulent from the beginning. At his February 14, 2022 sentencing hearing, he gave a tearful statement calling himself a flawed and broken man who made terrible choices and apologizing to victims. A 73-year-old retired victim gave devastating testimony at the hearing, stating emotionally, "He robbed me of 1/3 of my entire retirement account that I worked 40 years to build. He robbed me of the confidence to trust anyone ever again." U.S. District Judge Mark C. Scarsi sentenced Horwitz to 20 years in federal prison, the maximum allowed under his plea agreement, plus ordered him to pay $230.4 million in restitution to defrauded investors, which he will never be able to pay in full. Horwitz is currently incarcerated at FCI Terminal Island, a low-security federal correctional institution in San Pedro, California, with an expected release date around 2042 when he will be in his mid-50s. 2 major documentaries have covered his case and the massive fraud, Hulu's Bad Actor, a Hollywood Ponzi scheme, and Prime Video's Hollywood Hustler, both examining how a failed actor pulled off one of Hollywood's biggest financial frauds. This was all from our side today. Thanks for watching. Click here to check out another video.